Meeting to order at 6:03.
There she is, Kylie.
Wait 1 second. I thought we were waiting for one more person, so I wasn't on the spot here. Okay, roll call. If you could just say aye when you're called. Dr. Lee,
Aye.
Mrs. Anderson,
Aye.
Mrs. Pope. Aye. Mr. Steve. Bruno. Not working, not present, and the chair, Kelly Kelly, is present. Okay, flag salute. Dr. Lee, I was actually hoping maybe, and I need to put you on the spot, but I was hoping you could share your statement before we do the pledge.
Certainly, welcoming all and in recognition of this free speech item, noting that saying the Pledge of Allegiance is not a requirement to participate in the business of this board. If you do not say the pledge for religious, political, social, or personal reasons, you are most welcome here as an equal participant in the business of this public school board.
Thank you. That said, if you would like to join us, ready? Pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Makes more sense. We are also going to be addressing that later in the agenda. Okay, adoption of the agenda. Do I have a motion? I motion to adopt the agenda. Thank you, Mrs. Coe. And thank you, Mrs. Anderson, for the second. Please make sure you're talking into your microphone, me as well. Okay, organizational reports. Do we have Vanessa Mason with CUTA?
Hi, good evening. Good evening online, folks. Thank you for coming. So CUTA is working really hard among all the other professionals in the school district and would like some support from the community. So, we have lots of social media going around about ways to be mean to each other and cause harm to campuses, just be generally disrespectful. So CUTA, and I'm sure this would apply to bus drivers and cafeteria workers and everyone else in the district, it's just a general level of kindness. Could we ask our students, our staff, our families, our school board members to think first about kindness? Like, how would I feel if somebody said that to me? And so students have seen 2 years now of social media posts about horrible things you can do to your campuses and to your friends. We've watched an election with Democrats and Republicans trashing each other nonstop. We've watched school boards across the country get into fights. And so I think our students have watched this for 2 years, nonstop. And now we have reopened our schools, and the teachers and the staff on the campuses are barely holding it together. And so, I just had a union meeting that was 1 hour and 45 minutes long, and it was nonstop. I don't think we can do this much longer. So I want to say that it breaks my heart in the school district to have to say that, because I love where I work. But the teachers can't take much more. And if we could just treat each other with kindness and say thank you. And if somebody asks for a mask, don't send them to the office. Say, here's one for you. Ask them at the door, how was your day? Say please and thank you, act with kindness, and that's what makes the world go round. We have students who have never been socialized with other people. So when we have kindergartners and first and second graders acting like 3-year-olds, we have to know that that's where their emotional development stopped. They went to preschool maybe back when they were 3. And so when they snatch something out of another student's hand and then the other student responds with a hit, as a staff member, I have to know that that's where they are developmentally, and I have to respond appropriately. And the students need to be coached. And so, the teachers in my union meeting were asking, is there a program out there? What can we do? Because we're desperate to find things that we can do to help the students become successful citizens. And of course, there's no magic bullet, just like how do we get everybody to read at their grade level? There is no magic program, but I think starting with kindness, and I appreciate that, our own school board has struggled and we've begun acting kind to each other here in the school board room. We see a little bit more kindness in the politics, on the news. I will say I stopped watching, but and I feel like we're pulling each other through, but that can only go so far. And so as a staff, we have bonded together. A lot of the school sites are saying we're taking back our campus. We have to do something. And it's absolutely not the administration's fault, because there's only one or two or three of those individuals on a campus of 400, 500, 1,400 students. And so it takes the entire community to get through this. When we came back to school in July and August, most people thought the biggest problem would be masks. I don't know about you guys, but we thought, well, we'll go back to school, we'll do what we've done, what we've always done. Last year was an anomaly, what am I saying? It was an outlier, yes. And things will go back to normal, but I think that, again, we're in a whole new world and it's not nice. It's really, really ugly. And so if people can come to our school district and know that we all care about each other, because that's the thing that makes Center unique. When I go to presidents' meetings with the other 13 presidents for Sacramento County, that's the one thing that I am glowing about, is how amazing our relationship is with our superintendent and our school board, our negotiations team, where it's not like that in other districts. So we have a leg up among everybody else in the county, because we are already a family. Each school is a family, close-knit family, and then the other schools are our extended family. And so if we can just remember that, unlike when you were a child and your sibling annoyed you and punched them, we're going to treat each other like family, and the students are our own children. And if we could just ask our community members to remind them that we're just working here. We are just asking you to wear a mask when you come in the cafeteria to drop your child off for breakfast. We're not looking for an argument. We're just doing our job. And so if we can just remember, if we could all do our job with kindness, maybe things could get better.
Question, Mr. Blair?
I know that we have.
Oh, thank you.
I know that we're adding to the higher positions of school psychologists and things like that, counselors. But it seems to me that more feet on the ground at the lower positions that could deal with health in the classroom, we could get 2 price of 1, would be more effective. Is there money anywhere in the?
We actually have spots for that and have vacancies for that to help. So yes, that is actually in the mix. We are struggling with people at all levels. I can tell you the people we brought on and our people who are here are doing an outstanding job. But yes, we currently have vacancies for folks who can help out in classrooms, who can help out at yard duties, help out at different things. So across the spectrum, absolutely. And that's what a lot of the COVID funds are designed for. To address this. So we're constantly, whether it's myself and the union or myself and CSEA, we are constantly working to create better ways to support each other. I appreciate your words tonight, Vanessa, because it's true.
And I know it's not, it's not just us.
Right.
Every school and every district is
Those
dealing
kids have
with.
been at home for.
Yeah, and they've been watching hate-filled messages for a long time. So it's really difficult to retrain your brain to ask for something with a
Well, and as Mr. Blair says, what do you do when you're at home and your brother hits you? You hit that,
Yeah.
They deal with things on a family level that are totally different than you do at school.
And I appreciate the postings. There are 3 pages worth of postings on EdJoin. So I'm reaching out to the community members online. if you would like to work for the school district, apply. We need parents.
Are we still utilizing parent volunteers, or is it because of COVID we have stopped that?
Well, and not, parents in the community don't know to go to that link and look. for
And so we
it.
talked about that this
Okay.
afternoon, about how we could send out a message to say, these are the jobs we're posting. Walk into Mr. Grimes' office, fill out an application. We'll help you fill out an online application. What can we do to get community members on our campuses and be role models for our students?
Are any of those, like 3/4 time or full-time, or are they all just 2 or 3 hour jobs?
No, a lot of them are full-time.
Are they?
And to be honest, we would work, and Mr. Grimes, we would work with people with the hours they can take. So, and we're even having some of our part-time people who are picking up extra hours because they want to help out. So yes.
Perfect.
And I just want to thank Ms. Mason and thank you and all of our teachers for really focusing on moving forward in co-regulation. I think that's so critical right now because our students really do, they take their cues from the educators who are in our communities. And so I appreciate that we're really focusing not on what needs to be fixed in students, but on getting ourselves ready and our learning environments student ready, given our new reality, because I really feel that going back is not an option, only moving forward, right? We can only move forward. And I strongly believe that our students need to be coached and supported, and so do our teachers and our staff members towards greater kindness, empathy, and compassion. So I just want to thank you for calling that and naming that in the space. It's so needed. And as long as we keep that focus, I think on our center family and every member of it, it's going to be, you know, as good as it can be given these really strange conditions that we're in.
And I know San Juan put together some online videos to watch. And so I would appreciate Mr. Lair or Mr. Grimes, if you could reach out to the San Juan School District. And they had put together, I don't know, 18 hours of canned, they call it canned, videos to watch about how to support students that have experienced trauma in their lives. How do we react to that trauma and when they are having a moment? So we would love to have everybody trained in that. So not just teachers, but bus drivers and custodians and everybody.
Kindness. I can't even imagine the challenges you guys are going through. I mean, I have no gauge of knowing.
And I would challenge
So,
the
thank you.
board and the administration in the room to walk on campus, check in the office, but not walk around campus with the principal. Walk around as just another adult on the campus and see what it's like, because it's challenging. I mean, when you walk around with the administrator, they know Mr. Holmesley and they act a little different around Mr. Holmesley than they might with me, so.
Well, I think another problem too is it's been very politically charged. So some of these kids have sat home and listened to their parents trash the schools with
Yeah.
wearing masks or not wearing masks, and you know, so now they have a very negative imprint of schools.
Right. And everywhere, I mean,
Yeah.
it's happening in the grocery store or at McDonald's, I mean. it's-
People just.
But unfortunately, we have no control over that. We
Yes.
don't let you guys.
So that's why I challenge everyone in the community, don't yell at the McDonald's lady at the drive-through windows, don't yell at me either. Let's just remember,
Yeah.
we all showed up for work today. So there we go. I mean, like, bonus for
Exactly.
that.
You're doing the very best you can do, and we so appreciate it as a board and district. And you guys have just been amazing, absolutely
And we
amazing.
appreciate your support too. And the online board.
All right, thank you.
Well, we're all the board, whether we're sitting in the room or we're online, we're all one board.
Yeah, well,
I just want to point that out.
Vanessa, we're gonna kill them with kindness.
Yes, thank you.
all right.
Thank you.
Moving right along, we have Marie Huggins with CSEA.
Well, greetings. Happy first day of fall.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
That means we're hoping for cooler weather, right? At least I am.
6 tomorrow.
I wanted to shout out to Vanessa. Thank you so much for reminding us that kindness is an option, and how much just one little word or one smile can make a huge difference. And I know for me, I have to remind myself constantly about being kind. And I have a note on my computer at work that says, are my words kind, true, necessary? And I think that goes a long way. Sometimes before I respond, I kind of look at that and remind myself, okay, I don't need to say anything here. Sometimes what's not said is better. But thank you, Vanessa, for your hard work, your heart. Just thank you so much for what you do in the classroom and what the teachers are doing in the classroom, and trying to support with classified employees, and all of us trying to work together to help the children to have an environment where they can flourish and be nurtured. And just thank you for that. So as classified employees right now, we're working on, we just finished up our initial proposals for our negotiating year. So we have, we've submitted those down to the district, and they'll submit them to the board. And this is a successor year for our agreement. It's a 3-year agreement, and it came to an end in June, July. And so we will be renewing for another 3 years. And so that is something that when we're in a successor year, the whole contract is pretty much open. So we'll be able to actually go through and do some collaboration with the district and maybe do some language cleanup. And we're kind of excited about what the options are for this year, helping our language and our contract to be more conducive to an ongoing good relationship between the district and the union. I also wanted to say that in October, we began nominations for our president and secretary positions, and 2 of our negotiation positions. We will be looking at a new president for the 2022 school, or the 22 school year, as I will be retiring in December. So I look forward to seeing who wants to step up and make a difference and work with y'all to just continue to improve our district. So that's pretty much it for me right now. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Mrs. Huggins.
Thank
You've done
you.
a wonderful job, and it's been a pleasure working with you.
Well, I hope to get to see you. I hope to get to see you all in person again before December.
Yeah,
Oh, you
so
will.
we'll have to make a point of it, for
Yeah.
sure.
Okay.
And I know your
Thanks, Ms.
cooking's gonna be missed.
I think they're going to put me on an appointment of once a week or once a month to bring in goodies. I think
There you
that's.
go.
That is true.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marie.
All right, moving on to item number 6, reports and presentations. Item 1, Panorama 360, Mike Jordan.
I think we might have skipped one item, the
Did I?
facilities update. I'm sorry, Mike, almost.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It got tucked in on that
Item
page.
5, committee updates, facilities update by Richard Putnam. There.
It's short.
I know, my favorite part of the agenda, how did I miss it?
Good evening, everybody. We're back in school, so we have, pretty much we've gotten just back into our standard mode of taking care of work orders, hitting items. The maintenance department is shorthanded. COVID has come in and reared its ugly head on us. I was out for 2 weeks. My supervisor is out for 2+ weeks, almost be 3 weeks now. So we are taking care of work orders, addressing items as they're coming up. I've had some other information that came to me, so we will be getting some more of our subcontractors and vendors to help us take care of any AC issues and items like that. We are waiting on the appraisal for the land for Rex Fortune, and I'm hoping that will be coming sometime soon. We're kind of at the mercy because they're even backlogged and shorthanded. That's about it. And for you, Member Pope, I did meet with a fence company for McClellan, so I'll be getting some numbers here soon for getting an actual fence portion in the front of McClellan there, and then we're also getting the gate resolved for the fire.
I appreciate that. Thank you very
You
much
got
for
it.
letting me know.
That is all we have right now.
Thank you, and I'm glad you're back. I'm glad you're healthy. I'm glad your family's doing well.
Yes. Thank you all.
Is there any questions for Mr. President?
Just thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now, sorry about that. Moving along to item number 6. One Panorama 360.
All right, good evening. So Panorama 360 is an online survey platform that we started using last year to replace the Healthy Kids survey, but it has many more capabilities. And wanted to just do a brief presentation tonight to show you what is available through that platform. And we have joining us virtually from the virtual world, Samantha Seeker and Rachel Irwin, and I don't know how to, oh, there they are. Okay. All right, they are with Panorama, joining us from other parts of the country here, and they're going to give us a brief overview of what Panorama has to offer. So take it away.
Great, thank you. Let's see if I can just share my screen here with you all. That will work. Are you able to see and hear me okay? And
Yes,
see my
perfect.
screen? Awesome. Well, hello, and thank you for having us today. We are really excited to be joining you. We'll be using this time to share some background on Panorama Education and what we do, and then we'll give a brief overview on our partnership with Central Joint Unified School District, sharing some of our goals and details on the survey plans that we have. So on the Panorama side of things, we have myself. My name is Rachel Irwin. I'm the account director at Panorama, working with Central Joint Unified. My role focuses on developing long-term goals and strategies for our partnership. I also handle anything contract or professional development related. And I work alongside Mary Keogh, who is the client success manager for this partnership. And she works on the day-to-day logistics involving survey planning, integration, and platform use. So we work together to support Central Joint Unified. And I'm also joined tonight by Samantha Seeker, who's another colleague of mine on the account director team, who has also worked to help support Central Joint Unified. And she might just jump in at the end to help answer any questions. And we've been working directly with Ryan Miranda at Central Joint Unified, who has been leading the initiative of getting our partnership off the ground and continuing to develop the work that we're doing together. So here at Panorama, our mission is to radically improve education for every student. Our hope is to help create a world where every child has equitable access to opportunities in school and society at large. So we currently support over 12 million students across the country. As you'll see here, these are some of the districts specifically within California that we partner with. And we've developed a focus on social emotional learning and multi-tiered systems of support to help educators gain a holistic view of each student in order to support them fully. So educators can use our platform to get actionable data, drive change, and ultimately improve student outcomes. So I just want to start by giving a brief overview of what Panorama has to offer, and then we'll go into a little more detail of what our partnership is specifically focusing on in a couple minutes. So our work at Panorama falls into three different buckets. So we have our feedback surveys to gather input from stakeholders on topics like school climate, family engagement, teacher-student relationships. Then we have our focus on social emotional learning, where we have developed a universal screener for students and staff to measure and improve SEL. And then we have our student success platform, which is essentially a multi-tiered systems of support dashboard. It shows data on academics, behavior, attendance, by syncing with the school's student information system, as well as SEL data collected from our screener. So it brings all of this information into one place, allowing educators to see the connection between these areas and support the whole student. Okay. So now we'll focus on the specifics of our partnership with Center-Joint Unified. So our work together includes our use of our SEL screeners for students as well as teachers and staff, our climate and culture feedback surveys for students, staff, and families, as well as one of our newest tools, which is the check-in feature, which offers quick pulse check surveys to monitor and help understand how students are doing and how they're experiencing school in a specific moment, rather than their perceptions over the course of a semester or school year. So this is something that Ryan is really excited about rolling out this fall to help ensure that student voice is heard and used to build stronger student-teacher relationships, make sure that students' immediate needs are met, and inform school-wide action. So these are some of the high-level goals of our partnership that we've heard from Ryan and district leaders. One of the core reasons for our partnership is definitely to be able to measure SEL among students and staff, and using that data to drive action planning. So here's just a timeline for this school year that we have worked with Ryan to develop. So we're currently working on the integration process for the check-in feature, which will be ready to be rolled out a little later this fall. And then we'll do more of a deep dive with the SEL surveys this spring for students and staff. So we ran this survey with students last spring as well. So that provided some baseline data, and we'll get to start seeing and monitor change over time. And then we'll also be setting up professional development workshop with our teaching and learning team after the surveys have been completed, in order to help Center-Joint Unified faculty dig into that data and identify areas of strength and opportunities for growth. And of course, throughout the partnership, Mary and I will offer continuous support, including regular touch points, sharing various resources, and product support. Just to give a little background about our survey instruments. So we offer research-backed surveys for different stakeholders, including students, teachers and staff, and families. Our research team has worked in collaboration with the Harvard Graduate School of Education to develop these survey instruments grounded in advanced survey methodology and practice. And here you can see some of the different survey measures and topics that can be selected for our surveys. And schools and districts can customize the surveys by selecting the topics that they value most or want to prioritize. And now we'll just take a quick look into the platform, what the data actually looks like, and what we can do with it. So we have a variety of reporting layers, so you can view the data at the district, school, teacher, and course level, down to the individual student level for SEL data. So this allows districts the ability to see connections between schools, identify strengths and opportunities for improvement, both at the high level for the district down to each individual student. Because we have a variety of standardized survey topics, many of our partners choose to use them so that they can compare their results to our national benchmark data set. So this really allows you to put your results into context, and you can also monitor change over time and track improvement. So what you're seeing here is the ability to break down data by school on the right-hand side, and also by different groups of students on the left-hand side. So this offers the ability to really identify gaps, make connections, and take more pointed action, as you really have the data to back up that information. And here we can see what the student level results would look like for the social emotional learning data, which really helps teachers identify areas of strength or development in individual students or by class. So we've talked a lot about taking action on the data, and our Panorama Playbook is one resource that we offer to support educators in doing so. So we've developed this tool by partnering with several nonprofit organizations focused on developing SEL in schools and improving student outcomes, as well as getting input from teachers in our community. And Panorama's partners have access to our Playbook platform, which helps answer the question, what's next after they run the surveys, receive feedback, and the SEL data. So the Playbook offers a developing collection of validated strategies and actions that teachers can use to see improvement in certain topics. So for example, growth mindset or emotion regulation for SEL topics, or a sense of safety and teacher-student relationships for more general classroom feedback topics. So we've created this playbook to be an application with information to help educators take action and better serve their students. That's all we have for you today. I hope that helps to give a better understanding of Panorama and our partnership with Central Joint Unified School District. I don't want to take up too much of your time this evening, but we can certainly open the floor up to any questions that you have.
No, I think it's a great tool. Mr. Jordan, you must be very excited.
And it is fantastic, yes. And Ryan really is the one that did sort this out, Ryan and Tammy Trail. So I think that.
The other great part is we'll be able to bring the board data, actual concrete data around these surveys, where before we would use Google and we'd say, well, it's kind of this way, it's kind of, we'll actually have, and it's norm reference too, so we can compare ourselves to see how things are. So we're just scratching the surface, I believe, of what we can do with this. And as you saw, there's many topics that we want to get into that there are actually great questions that it's not, sorry, no disrespect to Mike or myself, they're actually researchers creating the questions to get at it, not just, we think this is a good one. So
Right.
I think
That's
it
what
will-
I got excited about when I saw
think it will be a good,
pre-done surveys that tried and true, right? Tried and tested.
correct.
That's
And
great.
then we can utilize this data to compare districts within our area. So that's great.
Correct.
It's just
Can
great.
you tell, oh, sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, it's just great also to remind people to make that connection, you know, by having those individual dashboards for each individual child, or just reminding them to make that connection between what's going on in their life and how they're performing in their particular class. Sorry. Go ahead.
Can you touch a little bit about the data disaggregation possibilities with Panorama? Our board's really looking at equity mindedness and, you know, beginning to start to look at disaggregated data. How can Panorama help us in that effort?
Yeah, actually, Sam, do you want to jump in on that one?
Sure. And excuse me, I'm coming a little bit off a cold. So please let me know if you all can't hear me. But in terms of data disaggregation, we can really do any sort of, you know, demographic information that you'd like to capture, we can use. Essentially what we do is we pull a roster and we attach a student ID code to that student information. So any kind of demographic information that you have available to you in a student information system, we'd be able to pull in here and show in those disaggregations. But is there something in particular you're wondering about?
So we're looking at our achievement scores and, you know, lowering those achievement gaps that have been persistent for certain student subpopulations.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I'm sure we'd be able to talk with Ryan about if you have anything specific in mind too. We can talk about pulling that in.
Yeah, and I would be interested, as far as disaggregated data, I would be interested in both disciplinary records and like academic A to G, you know, who's in the classes, where are they at right now, and what are we doing to bring them up to that next level kind of a thing.
So that might be a 5Lab thing. 5Lab is another data disaggregation tool we use. This might be, so, or in conjunction, but we can certainly, we're learning with our 5Lab pilot that we got. We can pull some pretty impressive data related where you can put the variables you want. So this is more survey, and we can disaggregate the survey information. But to go where you're going, we're on it. We're hoping in the coming months to be able to share with you some of the 5 Lab stuff that we're doing, in addition to some of the Panorama stuff, because we want to know where the kids are and then use some of the data piece, academic, behavioral, to help drive where we want to go with it.
And then, not in regards to disaggregated data, but another question on the surveys is I was wondering about, I'm sorry, I'm not picking on you. I'm wondering about the counseling, whether that's part of the surveys, if, you know, counseling services is part of one of your standardized surveys. Right.
I would say it would probably get at support for students, which would be a counselor, which would be a social worker, which could
That's
be.
even better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I say counseling, but
You're talking about a supportive adult on
full
campus.
support
Yes.
system, yeah.
I
How's that going?
I would, yes.
Okay, beautiful.
Yes.
Thank you.
Related to that, I saw that it mentioned that it can help track student and staff well-being. And I was wondering what are the plans regarding implementing that?
Well, we're gonna dig further in with Panorama once we're able to get those surveys out to our staff as well. And look at what are all our options. One of them is a platform we can look at the individual student level, where they're at on the different factors based off the survey.
Okay. Personally, I think this is great. I just kind of, as a data guy, I just want to dive into this. But the other question I had is the integration with the student information system. Is that like a daily sync, real time, once a week? How often does the data get synced between the two systems?
Yeah, it's a great question. So with the check-ins tool, that integration that we set up would be on a nightly basis. So then basically it means that up-to-date student roster information would be available to pull in. So if I'm a counselor and, you know, I know I'm going to be working with a couple kids over the course of the afternoon, and I want to get perhaps a check-in ready for those kids, it's a really easy, quick way for me just to be able to click, all right, I'm going to survey Rachel and Marie today, and I'll be able to ask them these 2 questions. And so you can kind of get that quickly set up and then be able to administer that survey shortly after.
Who has access to the Panorama survey? Is it your team, administration, teachers, everybody?
The administrative access or to the results or?
From the district perspective.
Right now, it's Brian, myself, I believe Kim Bailey has access to that as well, and possibly Rebecca Lawson.
So at the higher level, and then we can work with them on protocols and
Yep.
who gets access to the data and all that. It's set up on procedure since we're just getting started. We're really establishing that. But the data can be shared.
We share that out, correct?
Yeah,
My understanding is we could open that up further. Sorry, I didn't cut you off.
I didn't mean to cut you off. You're on a roll. We have a few different levels of access. You're exactly right. One on like the administrative tools and setting up the surveys, and then the other on the results side. And so, yeah, we're working closely with Ryan kind of on the actual setup pieces now and getting all of those pieces kind of ready to go. And then in terms of results, the report side of things, we have a few different levels. So there's district level access, where folks perhaps in this room would get to see, you know, kind of everything from district level all the way down to individual student reports. We have school level access, meaning that principals would be able to see all the data at their school, and then aggregated district level. And then we'd have teacher results. And that means that teachers would only be able to see the data at their school aggregated, at the district aggregated, and then only the specific students that they work with. And that's even if we want to set that up. If teachers are ready for that, great, we can absolutely go ahead and get that set. But we can work with Ryan to kind of customize both the levels as well as the timing with which we roll that out, so that we can make sure it's really thoughtful and intentional, and matches the pace that you're wanting to share that information as well.
Thank you for the clarification, because it's exactly what I was looking for.
Oh,
And
good.
one last question on my end. What about security, safety? You know, we hear a lot about data being out there. Obviously, the data is not going to be sold, but can you tell us a little bit about data security, data safety on your end with that transfer?
Yeah, so data security and privacy is super important to us. We have a whole team actually dedicated to it, knowing that this is such important information that we're holding on to. I can actually share a copy with you all after this, just kind of our data security and privacy policy, and that kind of lists out our super kind of formal stance there and the care that we take to protect data.
Perfect. Thank you. That'd be great.
Sure.
You mentioned the counselors could say, I'm gonna do Rachel and Tommy or whatever. Is there a way we can also randomize that so that it's not their choice of who they're doing?
I think what she was getting at was you could look up specifically how students are checking in. So if Scott fills out the survey and checks in, if I'm gonna have a meeting with Scott, then I can look him up. It's not that they're assigned to be with the counselor. It's based on giving the counselor or social worker the knowledge of
Yeah.
that. Does that make
So
sense?
if you already have a meeting set with a
Correct.
student and you want to see what their SEL check-ins look like, you can pull them up.
Correct.
And run a dash.
So it's not a randomization that assigns, Mr. Bruno to work with Nancy. This
Yeah.
is more of a resource for our staff to get the better picture.
It did sound a little bit different the way you said it, though, that you could set up a survey for the students. And so I think maybe we're talking about apples and oranges. I'm not sure.
So there's two different pieces of the SEL tools, and I'm sorry, I may have fudged that a little bit. So there's two pieces. There's what we're running this spring that Rachel mentioned, and those are our kind of district-wide social emotional learning surveys. We might pick a series of 4 to 7 topics, things like self-management, emotion regulation, and kids are self-reflecting. And then we also have what's called our check-in tool. And those are designed to be smaller, shorter pulse surveys. So let's say, perhaps I identify as a counselor that a few students in my caseload need some support with self-management. I might just do a pulse survey on self-management as I'm doing some interventions or activities with them to kind of monitor the efficacy and see actually how those things are working. So it's a slightly different, kind of two different use cases, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I found what I was looking for. It's the Panorama 360 Equity and Inclusion Survey. So that was, I was wondering if you could touch on that and what is it exactly? And it says it's a 360 survey, so I wasn't quite sure on that.
Yeah, so our equity and inclusion surveys are newer surveys. We came out with them within the past couple of years. And they really kind of stemmed from the desire. We were hearing a lot of need from districts saying that equity and inclusion is super important to us. And it's super important that we kind of understand where our kids are as the world is changing. And so there's a variety of topics similar to the ones that Rachel had listed out earlier. I can send over, or we can actually send over user guides that kind of list out all of these different survey topics in detail. But the idea being that we can, or we have a series of questions about things like cultural awareness and action, diversity and inclusion. And so it's asking kids, and this is designed for grades 6 through 12, actually. It's a little bit of an older geared survey, asking kids just about their experiences in the classroom related to learning about equity, learning about inclusion, what that means to be a student, kind of learning about that and what their experiences have been.
So it's just students, it's not students, teachers, and staff, and all of them reflecting on that. I guess I've maybe read the literature that's put out by Panorama incorrectly, perhaps.
No, there is a teacher and staff version as well. Our initial version was with students, so that's where I was speaking from. But yes, we do also have teacher and staff measures.
Okay, and are those supposed to all fit together to paint a picture of diversity and equity and inclusion on a site? And is there training supports, or how does that all work, or is it just data that's dumped and no action comes from it?
That's a great question. If you are hoping to use that survey content, we actually require a PD along with it. That data is super meaningful and can be a source of difficult conversations and So we want to make sure that we're kind of helping to be a neutral party and facilitate those discussions in a way that'll be productive and helpful for the people that have spent time reflecting on it. So it comes along with a PD. It's a great question. And I can share again, just kind of what those questions exactly are and give you some time to look over those.
I'd really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, and you did mention too, just about the reporting. All of our reporting will kind of mirror what Rachel was sharing. So when you have students, staff, families that take the same survey topic, so like a school climate topic, for example, you'll also be able to compare not only by stakeholder group, but also by topic. So seeing, okay, kids, staff, and families that have reflected on school climate, how are they all feeling? Are there people that are feeling more or less favorable about this particular topic? And what does that mean? How do we stay low on the ladder of inference and actually help to get a little bit deeper about the why before we jump to conclusions?
Thank you. That sounds like a tool that, you know, we may have use for based on some of the comments that were shared by our teachers union rep earlier, and that I've just been hearing from the community about school climate.
Yeah, it was really interesting too to hear some of Vanessa's comments at the beginning of the meeting, because I think kindness and just being open to kind of what others are going through, seeing this SEL data, while it's one piece of data and obviously shouldn't be looked at in a silo, hopefully that'll help to kind of, you know, give a little bit more perspective on what's going on with students and how they're feeling too. So I'm excited for this.
I'm sorry, great conversation, and as long as you guys are done, I want to kind of circle back to this conversation about the check-ins. I'm a little confused because I feel like we're talking about two different things. Like, you're talking about giving surveys and we're talking about looking at the results of regular check-ins. So are the check-ins done on a daily basis or a regular basis? How is that done? Or are we selecting when we do the check-ins?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it is a little bit up to you all. Like I said, the check-ins are, because they're supposed to be like a smaller pulse survey, they might not necessarily be done district-wide. They may be done for groups of students or pockets of kids, depending on the need that's identified by a responsible adult. So kind of to that example that I mentioned before, we would do these large district-wide surveys similar to the one that Rachel referenced that we're going to be doing in the spring. But leading up to that, we may check in with pockets of kids based off of the results that we got this past spring, just doing a quick pulse check of like, hey, how are you feeling? And I use that in the sense of like, you know, potentially to kind of move kids through either an intervention, but it could even just be a teacher wanting to administer a quick check-in at the beginning of their class, just asking kids how they're feeling today. Happy, sad, frustrated, angry.
It's not automatic. It's something we do randomly.
Right, but in addition to that, a lot of our classrooms use that type of check-in where you're in a simplest form. How are you feeling today? Is it a happy face, sad face, content face?
Yeah, it just would be nice to have it all in one system so that when you pull up the dashboard, you can see possibly a trend line or, you know, something showing what their daily check-ins look like. That would be amazing.
And so you'll have that in Panorama. You'll be able to see how kids have reported on their past check-ins.
Any other questions?
I just would thank Panorama for the time. I know they're East Coast, so for them, it's late. So I really appreciate you guys sticking with us and answering our questions and being so supportive. So thank you both very much for that.
Yeah, this was a really great presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us, and thank you for your time. We're excited to be working with you all.
And then Mike, did you have anything more to add?
No, just again, thank you.
Great.
Thank you all. Have a good evening.
You too. I'm sure you guys don't want to listen to the rest of our board meeting. You're welcome
You
to
might want to go to
stay.
bed.
If you'd like to, you can stay, but I'm going to say goodnight. All right, moving right along to our.
We do, I'd
Yes.
like to ask that, how often do you think we'd be doing the entire
Check-ins?
survey for everybody?
So I think we had it slated for 3 times for the SEL stuff, I believe, but Ryan, we're working on the schedule. with
It
that.
said November, April, and May.
Yeah.
So it did say it in the slides, but which we don't have those slides. Is it possible to get?
Yeah,
those
so
slides?
they'll forward those to us, and any other documents we get from them, we'll pass along to you as well.
November, April, and May.
Yeah, there were 3 different types of surveys, and
Yeah,
the pace
they're in
was,
there, yeah.
yeah.
The middle one was, I think, might have been more February, but I could double check. But it was November and May I saw.
Basically, they said fall, spring, and spring.
And spring.
Whatever those were. Okay, I'm sorry, moving right along, and I just need to get the number 1, item number 6.2, which is the bond program update and issuance opportunity from Caldwell Flores Winters. We'd like to welcome Kushru Gayara. I hope I'm saying that right. Okay, Kushru.
Jump in, Fisher.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Chris Guerra with CFW. Very pleased to be over here tonight. Our firm has had the privilege of serving your district for more than 30 years. I've been with the firm 29 and so 29 years. So my first trip, one of my very first meetings and trips was up to Center Unified. So thank you for having us for all of those years. I'm over here tonight to give you just a brief overview of your district's bonds programs, and then also present you an opportunity to be able to issue additional bonds if there is a need to do so in the future. So with that, just by way of introduction or by way of background, I should say, the district the district has 2 general obligation bond programs. The first one was back in 1991, where there was almost 60 million, $59.2 million approved by voters. Most of those bonds have been issued. There's about $5.8 million of bonds that are available to issue at this time. That authorization never expires. Somewhere in the future, whenever the board chooses to issue those bonds, you can issue those bonds. In addition to that, back in 2008, a little over 62% of the voters voted in a large bond, a $500 million bond for your district under Prop 39. This district has always been very fiscally prudent. When you have the authority to issue bonds, you did not go and immediately issue bonds because you did not need the funds at that time. The first time the district needed some money from that was almost 12 years later in 2020. That's when the first series of bonds was issued in the amount of $12 million. And there's approximately $487 million remaining to be issued over time. There are a couple of constraints when you issue bonds, though. One is how much the voters have authorized, which in this case is over $480 million. The second limiter, though, is the tax rate for this type of an election. And the future tax rate is limited to $60 per 100,000 assessed valuation. So under this election, the limiting factor of the amount of bonds you can issue is primarily the tax rate limits imposed by Prop 39. So a little later on in this presentation, when I'm talking, you'll see a number much lower than 478 current bonding capacity. And that's because this type of election is limited in the amount of taxes. The next page, on page number 2, I know there's a lot of small numbers and an eye test on here, but I'd like you to request you to focus on the column, the second from the right, which is the repayment ratio. And once again, a reflection on the prudent financial management of this district over the years has been how you have borrowed your money and the conservative approach and the nature that you have used to borrow monies. You may recall that about 6 or 7 years ago, there was a large district down in Southern California that issued bonds at a very high rate. For every dollar that the voters borrowed, they would have to pay about $10. So that district issued $100 million of bonds and would have to pay back over $1 billion. That was understandably got the attention of the press and eventually the legislature. And a law was passed or regulations were passed under AB 182 that limit the amount of the repayment ratio. So for every dollar you borrow, the state deems that it's acceptable to pay back up to $4, but no more than $4. So you can't do a 10-to-1 kind of a bond anymore. What's interesting to see, if you look at the ratios over here in the second last column, you'll notice that long before there was regulations, long before there was laws, long before there was legal requirements to have a payback ratio of less than 4-to-1. Your payback ratios have always been well under 4-to-1. And I'm just eyeballing this on an average, I would say it's probably a little bit less than 2-to-1. So your borrowing, a lower number is better. Your borrowing is half of what the state considers the acceptable limit. And once again, lower is better. So this is a reflection on your district's prudent management of your finances. The next page talks about the ability to issue bonds. It is my understanding that the district is anticipating the construction of additional school facilities. May also be looking to see if there's any dollars available to modernize existing school facilities. And if there is a need for funds that's envisioned within the next 3 years, the district does have a position, is in a position right now to issue bonds either under the 1991 authorization or the 2008 authorization. For the purpose of this illustration, I'm using the 2008 authorization because the 1991 authorization has a limited amount of dollars available, only $5 million. And it is my understanding that your needs to construct the school facilities that are being proposed is in excess of that number. So we've been looking at the 2008 authorization. There's another item that limits the amount of bonds that could be sold. But as you may remember, the district had anticipated that they may need to issue bonds later on this year. And earlier this year, you had sought and successfully garnered a debt limit increase of 3.23% of the state. What that number indicates is that number as a percentage of your assessed valuation is the maximum amount of bonds that you can now outstanding. So when I look at all those numbers together, and I look at the tax rate limiter, based on where interest rates are at the time of the pricing of the sale of the bonds, today you have the ability to issue up to $40 million of additional bonds to be able to construct school facilities. I know folks are still thinking the impact of the pandemic. I know that people are watching their wallets as they always do. But the chart below, what it presents to you is, as the bonds get paid down, and you may remember a couple of pages ago, there was several bonds. As those bonds get paid off, the blue bars represent what the tax rate is for the existing bonds that you already have outstanding. And you'll see that those are dropping over time. The green bars indicate what, if you were to sell an additional $40 million of bonds, what the tax rate, the estimated tax rate would be for the new bonds that you would be selling. And what's important to see over here is that we will not be raising taxes if you issue these bonds above what folks are paying, and the tax rate will continue to decline slightly over time. But it is anticipated that once all of the old bonds are paid off and you only have the new election bonds, the tax rate will drop substantially because you're limited to $60 per $100,000 a year. So your staff, it was important that we put this graph together, present it to you, and for whoever will be watching this meeting, make them aware that issuing these new bonds will not exceed tax rates above the current levels. We're coming and backfilling the tax rate as old bonds are paid. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, the very last page, I know some of you are familiar with this, but the process of issuing bonds is, if directed by your staff, the finance team will get to work and start preparing documentation to bring back to you at a future board meeting, where you will at that point officially take action and set the parameters for the bond sale and delegate some of those tasks to your staff. The next step would be to be able to conduct an interview with the rating agencies. Once again, your staff will meet with them in the old days. We would have them come to San Francisco to meet with them, the folks face to face. Today, it's at least for the foreseeable future, is via Zoom. So we would have a meeting with them, as you did last year. The district currently has a very strong rating. It's got an A+ credit rating. Our goal is going to be to maintain that credit rating. Is it possible to go even higher? Yes, you can go even higher than an A+ is a AA category. But at this point, given the uncertainty of the pandemic, given everything that's around us, our goal is going to be to maintain that rating. I'm pretty sure we're going to maintain that rating. But that's the part of the interview process with the rating agencies. And at the conclusion of that meeting, they will, about a week later, they will assign a rating. And we will initially inform your staff what that rating is. Obviously, we want the highest credit rating we can get. A higher credit rating means we can borrow money at a lower cost. Borrowing money at a lower cost means less of a tax impact on the community. So that's absolutely the goal of the rating process. It's pretty rigorous. They look at the finances of the district. They look at your local economy. They look at the structure of the bonds. And then they look at the management of the district. Who's the board? Who are the administrators? And what is their track record in managing school districts? I think we're going to do very well in all of those, but all the factors that are within our control, including the fact that there's development coming in, which is a positive thing, because more development means more value in the community to support the bonds. All of those are positive things. There's somewhat uncertainty surrounding where the economy is going to go and where the state may go in the future with funding. We hope there's good news in the headlines that we're the rating agency. We understand very seriously. No. But seriously though, I do anticipate we're going to maintain our rating, but we're going to have to work towards it. Assuming the board adopts the documents, we have the rating. The next event that occurs is a prospectus is submitted to investors. In the old days, we would actually print 200 or 300 books of about 200 or 300 pages each, describing all the factors of the district and mail them out by FedEx. It was not a cheap thing to do. Today, of course, with email and websites, it's an electronic distribution. So that'll be distributed about a week later. We get on a phone call together with the underwriter. The underwriter is the broker who buys the bonds for the district. Your staff gets on the phone. My organization and a couple of my colleagues get on the phone. We always invite the county treasurer to participate as well because they have a good pulse on where the market is. And then there's an agreement on the interest rates, maturity by maturity, bond by bond. The underwriter will read out interest rates. It is my job to advise your staff and recommend to your staff what is an appropriate rate, what is not an appropriate rate based on comps in the market. And this is one of the few remaining businesses that works on the spoken word. And if the district elects to proceed with the bond sale on a phone call with Superintendent Lur and Ms. Coronado will get on a phone call, and they say, yes, these rates are acceptable to us. That's a $40 million transaction that occurs right there and then. Yes, eventually everything is documented and is written down and the lawyers get involved to close it up. But it is a phone call. The deal is essentially done in a phone call. That's where the interest rates are. Don't know what the interest rates are going. We are in a rising interest rate environment. We hit the bottoms several months ago. But we anticipate that the interest rate of the bonds will be somewhere in the 3% range. And when you're borrowing money for 25 to 30 years at 3%, that's near historic lows. It's not at the historic lows. But once again, this is not a bad time to be borrowing money.
Did you say 2%?
Obviously, I know about 3%. 3% is the maybe slightly less, slightly above, but right around 3% for a 25 to 30-year term. That would be the term of the bond. Some are usually between 25
I know last time it was amazing, the low percentage we got. Do you
Yes.
remember what that was?
Yes, it was in the twos. That was a little while ago. Interest rates have moved since then, and they have continued to move upwards. But yes, we have been able to get into the twos in the past. With a lot of luck, we may be able to still get it there this time, Ms. Anderson. But I want to just hedge by saying it'll be somewhere in the high twos to low threes is where we anticipate it.
Yeah, well, everyone was blown out of the water then, but who knew that it was going to go lower, you know?
Once all of that occurs, about 2 weeks after that pricing, the transaction closes. The money is deposited with the county, and then the dollars are available for you to be able to expend on construction projects. The process is usually about 60 days. So if directed by staff to get going, it's usually about 60 days after that the bonds could be sold and the funds get deposited in the bank. The district always maintains the ability, if there's a spike in interest rates, if there's some reason they want to defer or change the pricing, your staff ultimately controls the bond pricing and their ability. but we like to usually target a date. If we're gonna do it this year, probably the first week of December is the latest we can go to the market and sell bonds. After that, we start losing buyers for holidays. So it would be either get it done by early December or roll into sometime next year. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have over here or via the video link, and see if I may answer any questions regarding.
Unfortunately, not being here, you missed the handouts that we had
It's in
to
the-
provide.
It's in the packet.
It's in the packet. It's in the packet. Thanks for your concern.
And
Yeah, thank you so much. I was able to follow along with your presentation, and I really do appreciate the information you provided to us.
And I know Kushner is pretty humble, but he has done great work for us over the years, prior to my time, prior to the superintendent before, but CFW has been a great partner and really looked out for us. And really, you look at those bond ratios, that is the work of the district, but it's also the work of our consultants. And Kushner, I know you've led that, so I'm thanking you this time, because you always thank me and the board, so we're thanking you for your continued leadership and support of Center Unified. Thanks.
I was thinking the same thing, Scott. He's telling us what a great job we're doing, but it's really you that's doing it. So, thank you. Thank you for telling us we're doing great. My questions probably don't need to go to Kushru. Mine are more directed towards, what are our facility projections at this point? When are we gonna need the money? How much money are we gonna need for construction? I know that's kind of arbitrary, but just a general idea.
Yeah, so thanks, Kelly, for bringing that up. So one of the things Mr. Patton brought up was the idea, we're waiting on the purchase of the property. That 12 million, I think, that we'd issued was really for beginning phase of architect work, and then also purchasing of property, and then also matching for our CTE projects. So we're waiting on that final cost number, and then we're putting numbers together, and then we're gonna bring Kushru back to see what we can get at that moment. And then we'll come back to you with some financial projections of where we are. Right now, we believe we have a shortfall for the cost of the school to where we want to be. So as I think I pointed out to the board in the past, we may need to phase the school, but we need to see some of those numbers, see that property, this property's going up. So we want to get that number, and then we can put it all together, and we'll come back to you probably with CPM's help to share with you where we are, and then we'll loop Mr. Kushner in on this one too, to help us out with where we are projected wise with the bonds and timelines. So I would suspect, if not, well, I don't know, October is when we're supposed to get the thing, so maybe our November meeting that we have a better picture for you.
I know we were the first, we were their first clients, I believe, but they were already on board when I came on. And Rex spoke very highly of them at that time. I've never heard a bad word about that company working with us. They've done a fantastic job all the way through.
It's been a privilege
29
working
years.
They treat us well.
And I appreciate you giving us the for dummies version, because when it comes to bonds, I know zero. I didn't even know how they worked at all, let alone the details.
So as a final comment, I would say if Kushner ever wants to leave the financial market, he has a job as a teacher.
And they also provide scholarships to our kids.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Kushner. Thank you.
I also want to thank you so much for everything you're doing as a dad of a 7th grader and 9th grader. It's amazing what all of you have done over the last year and a half. And I always thought this year would be much easier, and then miraculously after the summer. But anyway, so thank you from all the parents and the kids in California.
Thank you, Kushner.
We'll be in contact, I'm sure.
Listen.
Where you-
Yeah, San Jose.
You should dig out some of those pictures. Those people look totally different.
What's it here? Well, okay.
We all look different too, though, so we'll keep those things for a while.
Great, okay, moving on to item number 7, comments from the audience regarding items not on the agenda. Do we have any comments from the public or in the room?
Nothing.
See nothing, I won't read the whole statement. There we go. Moving on to the board and superintendent reports, and I'm gonna go first. I have no report. Next, we'll have Dr. Lee.
Okay, so welcome everybody and thank you. September is a really busy month with respect to multicultural education. It's the month when we celebrate Hispanic heritage contributions to this nation's fabric, along with Constitution Week and Constitution and Citizenship Day. And I'm really excited to hear and learn about some of the activities that our district engaged in to recognize Constitution Week. So important, especially at times like right now. Our schools are really the primary vehicles where we learn about our rights and responsibilities, and those are the things that make our nation great. And so I always recognize Constitution Week. It's always been a favorite time of mine as an educator to increase civic competency and awareness. In addition, this month does hold special meaning for us as a community as we marked Patriot Day and the 20th anniversary of 9/11, and as we prepare to commemorate Gold Star Mother's Day next week. And I want to thank you to the many for your service and sacrifices so that we can live free in this world, which seems to be becoming a scarcity in so many ways, freedom. And so finally, as we look ahead to the upcoming Native American Day on September 24th, I just want to take a moment to note and acknowledge that our meetings, all of us are sitting our bottom somewhere here in Sacramento County. This is really the land and the ancestral homeland of the Miwok, Miwok, Nisenan, and Maidu peoples. And they are the indigenous peoples of this land. And I feel it's super important that we recognize that as we seek to build a more inclusive and just learning community. And finally, just wrapping up, COVID is here in this district and in our community. The pandemic hasn't ended. It's been ongoing since I became a member of this board. I did enjoy a very awesome webinar from the California School Board Association recently, governing in a time of chaos, board meetings in an age of COVID and CRT. There were some great suggestions and strategies that were shared there about how boards can work together more effectively to navigate the sticky topics that we're all facing, things like COVID and ethnic studies and critical race theory. And I really have to say that we are seeing some strange things in our public schools and higher education right now, and it always trickles down. Just last week, hundreds of students were dropped in our local community at Sac State, which is a public university, all because they had not uploaded COVID vaccination records by a deadline. More recently, I have had some folks reach out to me with concern about impending mandates to vaccinate our K through 12 students. And I want you to know that we are listening. We're bringing your thoughts and concerns to the decision makers with the power and authority in this situation. And I just want to encourage everyone to keep speaking out, keep raising awareness. When we fall complacent, oppression wins. And as someone who's deeply committed to equity, full stop, I have deep concerns that we're potentially creating a two-tier citizenship system among the vaccinated and unvaccinated right before all of our eyes. And now our students and our children are becoming involved. And it certainly seems that we're getting a living lesson in how the wheels of oppression, exclusion, separation, and othering are set in motion through this public health effort. And I truly hope that our efforts to ensure public safety do not serve to further marginalize, penalize, or ostracize some groups over others, or to effectively segregate, ban, or exclude some groups from public education. So as always, be safe and be well. And I truly look forward to welcoming you at my next drop-in office hours, October 4th, 4 to 5, on Zoom. The Zoom link's on our website, and please drop in anytime. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. Mrs. Anderson?
I have no report for tonight, thank you. I'm just gonna wait until all the dust settles with the COVID stuff. Just for the parents to know that those decisions are not made by us, they're made by the experts on the issue.
Thank you, Kelly. As I am reflecting on Ms. Mason's comment, I'd like to say that if everybody could just be mindful of their behavior, their language, their mannerism, it could be beneficial to everybody. Our district employees work very hard. They do not need to be treated with disrespect. We have to value our teachers and our employees. And we have to value the property that we have at the district, because it does cost money to replace things that are broken in a bathroom or in a gymnasium or whatever. As Miss Marie said, kind, true, and necessary words. If we could remember those three, it could be a better place. So be mindful of your actions, please. Nobody needs to be treated with disrespect. Recently this month, we had 2 families within our district that lost their father, their husband, their son. And I want to give sympathies to those families. It was due to complications of COVID. So I want to give my sympathies and my heartfelt prayers. We also had an employee of our district that was hit by a bike, who was riding his bicycle home from work and was hit by a motorist. Thankfully, this employee is safe and he's going to have a long road to recovery, but I wish him well. If everybody could please wear a mask, wear their bike helmet, and let's work together to keep everybody safe. On a positive note, congratulations to Mr. Bruno. He just got married to his lovely wife. May you have a long, happy life. That's my part.
I do have something. Thank you. Oh, go ahead, Mrs. Anderson. So I did have some communication with somebody at the high school who was real concerned about morale at the high school and what between the teachers and the administration and just the general feeling at the high school. So I hope that things can get better there. I hope that the kindness communication can get to them and they can treat each other with respect and an extra kind word. And I know that they're all under more pressure even than the littler grades with kids and not knowing how to react to each other, not wanting to be there because they had a year off where they could just walk the streets or do whatever they wanted in some cases. And I think the pressure, it's a pressure cooker all the way around right now. So hang in there to all of them and just like Kelly said, treat each other with a little respect and kindness and we'll get through it. We'll find a way to get through it. We always do.
Like this is folks. Okay, Mr. Bruno, I did not realize you got married. Congratulations.
Yeah, I know. Thank you.
You kept on the lowdown.
Somewhat. So on that personal note, my wife and I, we consider ourselves married for a considerable length of time, but we decided to finally make it official paperwork-wise this year because unfortunately my daughter had the nerve to go and become an adult, and so I can no longer claim her on my taxes. And you know, finally single versus finally having households is a significant difference. So you know, it was very romantic. Very romantic.
Tax day, to get married. That's one reason.
Yeah, literally it did happen. The proposal to do it this year happened while filing taxes.
Our tax code's responsible for more marriages.
But so first of all, I'd like to apologize to everyone for being late today. I hit a lot more traffic than anticipated. My commute took me about half an hour longer than I thought. Unfortunately, these things happen sometimes. I regret that I missed the comments earlier. I will make it a point to go back and view what I missed later because I get the feeling I missed some important stuff. So please know that it is important to me and I will get caught up. The other thing I wanted to add, I had a community member reach out to me after our last meeting, and they pointed out that we're asking students and staff members to wear their masks all day. And although it does make it easier for us to take our masks off to speak, we really should make a point to try to keep them on the same as we're asking them. So I'm going to ask that we all try to speak up and maybe move our mics a little closer and then keep our masks on our face during the meeting so we're setting the proper example. So that's all that I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bruno. And Mr. Lear.
And I think Vanessa created a theme here. The first word I'm gonna say is kindness. And I think Vanessa, I appreciate your words tonight. I think it hit home, not just here, but in our home lives as well. So thank you for that. And then obviously the hardworking staff of Center Unified, everyone is working extremely hard right now, doing things that we thought we would probably never thought we'd have to do as educators. And I can't say enough or thank them enough for what they do each and every day. And each and every day is a new day and with new things. So I want to acknowledge that. To Trustee Pope's and Dr. Lee's comments, COVID is settling right now down in our district, which is good. In the schools, we're seeing less cases. However, if you look at data on hospitalization and in the community, we're still seeing it. So we can't let our guard down. We have to continue to be vigilant and make sure that we are doing everything we can to get through this. And hopefully, we won't be seeing it resurge again during winter, hopefully. But by keeping vigilant on our protocols, we can continue to do it. And with that, thanking the staff that have taken out of their normal jobs to do contact tracing, contacting families. It is a very time-consuming process for the right reason, but it's in addition to what they're normally doing. And so I heard today, it was funny, one person just saying they were contact tracing, just figuring out who they needed to contact, took about 2.5 hours per episode. So that's a lot on top of their normal day. And then also, as it's kind of been alluded to, the Sacramento County Grand Jury released a report recently that asked superintendents and districts to respond to the recommendation of K-12 mandate for vaccination for students. And so just to let the board know, that's in process. We're talking as a collective county with our health officials to look at an appropriate response, and I'll keep you guys informed along the way as that comes up. But there's definitely some red flags associated with the recommendation, and so we're going to take our time to make sure we respond appropriately, and likely it may be a collective response if we can get folks in the room to all agree, which is never easy with 13 people. But I feel confident that we're here for the kids, we're here for our staff, and we'll do the right thing for our families. And finally, kindness. That's it.
I'm sorry, I always end up needing to say something, so I'm gonna go back, because last month I neglected to make a completely unrelated announcement that has nothing to do with the district, but for those of you who know my daughter, Jamie Kelly, she is now Jamie Lucky. She got married on August 4th, so just wanted to announce. that.
Congratulations.
You guys know her.
Some of them would know Jamie since she was a little.
Her husband, they've known each other since Jamie was born, so.
Wow.
Yeah. It
Congratulations.
took us all by surprise. It was like, what? Yeah, okay, all right, board and superintendent reports are over. Let's go to the consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve? Thank you, Mr. Bruno. We have a second. Anderson, do we have any discussion on the consent agenda?
I do want to just thank Ms. Hunt for updating those minutes. I did see them in the packet, and I know that involved backtracking, so I wanted to express appreciation again for Ms. Hunt and everything that she does for us.
Okay, and are we ready for the vote? We are. Let's go in opposite direction. Mr. Bruno.
Aye.
Mrs. Pope. Aye. Mrs. Anderson. Aye. Dr. Lee.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Consent agenda is passed 5-0. All right, moving on to business items. We have item A, monthly recognitions and resources. I'm going to go ahead and read this statement. At the August 18, 2021 board meeting, the board asked that the district investigate the process other districts use to acknowledge special recognitions, such as the ones referenced by the California Department of Education, and provide a summary of their findings. The staff has provided a summary of what the district learned in contacting other districts. Who will be providing that?
So I can go ahead and provide it. So we did.
Oh, I'm sorry. We need a motion to bring it to the floor or a motion to approve. And thank you, Mrs. Pope. And Was that you making a motion? Yes, and is there a second?
Which, I'm sorry.
She made a motion to bring it to the floor for discussion.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Bruno. Go ahead.
So at the last meeting, as trustee Kelly had mentioned there, so we did, talking with other districts, found the boards have different ways of acknowledging it, which probably won't make this process any more clear for us. But some boards have not previously acknowledged any. Some boards or a district department or school side or even a class may bring forward the item as a board agenda item in recognition. And then the board would consider that, the board could approve it and then go from there. Or community or other individuals bring forward the recognition and the board recognizes through some form of formal resolution or some other formal acknowledgement. Another way that's happened, the board at the beginning accepts kind of a yearly calendar of events. And then those acknowledgements are then brought forward during the month or the previous month of recognition. So the community recognizes that the board is in support of these and puts that out. Or the board approves a yearly calendar in one district and they sent those out to the school sites in their newsletters and stuff like that, put that out, and then they publicize it through their communication. So to be very honest, there was not a clear, easy way to address it. But that's the ideas or themes of what we heard.
I guess I do have a question, just so we can better understand. What is the goal for this item?
What do we plan on doing?
So,
What's the goal?
and I don't want to speak for anyone, but it was my understanding that it was the request that the board would acknowledge special recognitions that such as the one list provided by CDE for events that happen during the month, whether it be a recognition of a month or a day, and then it would be publicized. So then with that, they would be acknowledged and welcoming and people would understand that the board is in support. I think that's it. Dr. Lee, does that, I know you and I kind of talked a little bit about this. Is that acknowledged?
Yeah. That seems to be what I remember, and especially around the Heritage Months, official recognition from the board and support of those Heritage Months. And I appreciate those examples from, multiple boards and districts in the area and how they, address or celebrate these Heritage Months that have been, established to really bring in marginalized communities into the mainstream.
Well, another question. How do you see this being implemented?
Before we answer that, can
I don't know.
I have a couple of concerns regarding how it's going to be implemented. But not only that, but how we're going to select each group. I mean, I'm not opposed to recognizing groups, but I think we need to walk a very thin line on how we're implementing it. Who are we recognizing? How are we recognizing them? Who's selecting? Who's recognizing them? And at some point I had said, well, the California Department of Education is recognizing them, but we could just go with that. Well, then I saw Columbus Day, and there's absolutely no situation in life where I will support anything that has to do with celebrating Columbus Day. So, that just poses a problem for me. So
I think that's why we really did, at our last meeting, from my recollection, we were focusing more on the Heritage Months because when we looked at that list, it was so huge and there were lots of different, like you mentioned, President Kelly, things on there.
Or at all, I think it's just gonna be a big mess because there's just too many different things that can come up and there's just, the teachers don't have enough time in a day to address all of the issues that they have now, let alone adding more to their plate.
And I don't think that necessarily
I'm not
the teachers
sure
need to implement anything. They can choose to implement something if it's, fits into their curriculum or it's something that they're passionate about. I get that that's, optional. that the recognition is really just us making like an official, like, hey, we welcome you, kind of a thing. But again, when we recognize one group, we're not recognizing others.
Well, and
So
then,
it's really difficult. I mean, it's just, I
and
don't know, I'm reluctant to go there.
it also depends on who's gonna choose these days. If we're gonna ask staff to choose these days, I don't wanna put it on them to forget or not include a group. Not for any
Yeah.
reason, but just because, it maybe just didn't
Well,
think
for
of it or whatever.
instance, and this was not our district at all in any way, shape, or form, but I read online where a teacher was saying, I don't have an American flag in my classroom. And a student asked me what they were supposed to salute, and I told them they could salute the gay pride flag I had. That's not gonna happen in our district, period. I don't care who the teacher is or what the situation is. I expect there to be an American flag in every classroom.
So I think to get back to the topic of, we're talking about different months and not the flag necessarily, because we do have flags in it, but I think the point is, we as staff would need to know, and I mean, Mr. Jordan and I kind of offline talked. I would be concerned I might pick one wrong or the other, and so I would want a bigger, if we did go that route, I would want a bigger group to research some of the things, because
That's a lot of time.
well, and I don't want to, I wouldn't want to make a mistake. Sorry.
Yeah, well, and I don't wanna put
Yeah,
that on
so
you
I don't-
or staff.
And I hate to say, I don't want to recognize some heritage group. It just goes against everything I believe in. But at the same time, when you recognize one, you run the risk of forgetting someone else. And I just,
Our high school's always been good at recognizing different cultures, having different events to recognize different cultures.
I have a question here. My recollection of last meeting is that we were mostly talking about going with the CD list.
yeah,
Um,
that is
Which,
correct.
once I got a look at the list, it has a lot more on it than I anticipated. But something you said, President Kelly, really leaves me questioning. You said you wouldn't want to honor Columbus Day.
Ever.
Now,
Sorry.
Columbus Day is particularly tricky because if you exclude it, there are some people who feel very passionately. I know, for instance, in the Italian American community, some people are very passionate about it. And I know that some people are passionate about it in the exact opposite direction. And I mean, honestly, I can see that one offending people whether we include or exclude.
Yep.
But if, I'm thinking if we spend time discussing them at the meeting, at the board meeting every month, with the length of some of the things in some of these months, that could get time consuming. But if we were to put it just on a calendar, but the district calendar, would you be opposed to including Columbus Day because it's on the CD list?
Well, Columbus Day is also on the Google Calendar, and that's what we use.
It is actually on, it is on.
It's
our-
already on the calendar.
And the district uses Google Calendar, and everything that's on our calendar was not put on the calendar by any district staff. It was put on there by Google.
Right.
Because if there was a day or recognition, staff, superintendent would come to the board and say, we would like to recognize these days. That has never happened. So what's on our calendar is provided by Google and Google.
And Google does, or the system that does do it does, it's extensive. I mean,
Yeah,
they
it's-
cover.
You
Google
can
does.
unselect that. but-
Correct.
Yes, you can unselect it.
Because it isn't a school holiday in California,
Correct.
Columbus
But
Day.
it's not.
Columbus Day's not a school.
No,
We
it's not.
may be enforced to add stuff to our schools that we don't necessarily want to add to our schools. But there are people who are offended by Halloween. There are people that are offended by Columbus Day, apparently. There are people that are offended by other things. Well, we keep losing the American holidays, but being forced to add other holidays that the Americans or some people possibly don't agree with.
I mean, these aren't
So
holidays.
you're gonna open up a political battle.
So these are heritage months, and I would encourage us to focus on the heritage months in this list from the CDC. So September, for example, is National Hispanic Heritage Month. October, for example, is Filipino American History Month. In November, we have California Sikh American Awareness and Appreciation Month. So these are heritage months that I was bringing this item forward to. And that's what I would encourage us to consider. And the motion I would make is that we focus on the cultural heritage months that are provided by the CDC. So moving forward, in February, there's National African American History Month. In March, that's Women's History Month. In April, pardon me, I'm just scrolling the list here so we can hopefully have a clearer understanding. I don't see anything there in April. May is Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And in June, we have LGBT Pride Month, and those are the months that are under consideration. Not I wasn't.
LGBTQ+.
June is LGBTQ Pride Month.
Exactly, that's not the Heritage Month.
Oh, yes, it is. It absolutely is. It absolutely is part of American culture and tradition, and that's why these months were established. So that folks who have been historically marginalized and oppressed can have a space, and so that they can, so that we can all celebrate the various members of our community and the diversity and richness of diversity in our community. So I'm calling out those specific months and motioning that we approve board recognition of those specific months, so that I'm clear about what I would be proposing.
Okay, well, let's hear from Mrs. Mason, and then I also have some more comments.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly. We have a wonderful English language development department within our district that has surveyed all of our students that are second language learners. I would ask that maybe they share some of their data with our school board and that we recognize our own. So we talk about our heritage within our own district. Maybe it might not be what is identified in the traditional months that Dr. Lee has listed. I don't have the list that she's sharing, but we have a lot of Middle Eastern, we have people from, yes, we have people from all over the world. So let's honor our own. We could, of course, include other groups of people, but I think you do run a slippery slope of excluding somebody. Because somebody didn't fill out a survey at some point, and so their culture might be excluded. But then, but at least we could honor our own. So maybe involve the data that we already own from our English language development department.
And pardon me, I just have to say stridently that these heritage months are nationally, federally established and states recognized because these are our own. All of these groups and heritage groups are our own. Yes. And so when we talk about celebrating our own, we're talking about celebrating those groups who have been marginalized. And that's why I'm really focusing in and hoping our board can focus in on the heritage months because it's a small step in the right direction just to recognize and acknowledge the different heritage and the different groups that contribute to our community and our society.
So I just have a couple of things to say. First of all, I want to reiterate that LGBTQ+ is a cultural heritage topic. They are part of our community. I also kind of feel like women's history is also cultural heritage.
Absolutely.
And if we could somehow phrase this to where we are recognizing the ones that are identified that are cultural recognitions in the CDE, and also put into what we're approving that any other cultural group that wishes to propose that the board recognize them we can add them in. And I think that might help us in avoiding that slippery slope of missing somebody.
And can I add that the teachers are not expected to instruct on the cultural heritage months? Am I clear? Is that the intention of the board?
No, we're
Okay,
not.
okay, I just wanted to make sure that
It's
that's clear as well.
being, you know.
I mean, picking
guided.
social studies curriculum is just like this. And we've already done that
Fun
multiple
times.
times, so, yeah, now you know what it's like to be on the social studies committee.
Regarding that question, I would say that if teachers can find a way to work the stuff into their curriculum, I think that's wonderful.
Yeah.
But having grown up with a mother doing lesson plans, I would not want to try to get in the way of it.
Yeah, no,
So-
okay, just wanted to clarify, thank you.
And the Heritage Months really do give us an opportunity to think across disciplines. It's not just social studies, it's about American culture. And that's what schools are all about. And so for me, it really always was a time and is a time when I think across the disciplines, across the subjects, what are contributions that are made that are maybe not necessarily highlighted in our textbooks or in our traditional approaches. So it's an invitation, it's a recognition of that time. And that's why, I hope that our board will move, on the motion that I put out on the table about the Heritage Month.
And maybe the board could start with a definition of Heritage Month and then move forward from there, because if the definition of heritage is not clear, it's hard to select heritage groups, you know. And I do agree, the CTC is already, or the CDE's probably already vetted this, so.
I want to make sure, I'm sorry, but before you go, I did have a question. So when you were talking about the survey that the English EL group has done.
Yeah. It's
I
a
would
home,
imagine-
it's a home language survey. so
Yeah, I would
just-
imagine that there's so many languages that are not part of the California Department of Education's list already.
Right, because that
So
would be
then
the,
how would we weave those into the calendar?
right,
That would be, so,
Because there's over 38
Yes.
languages spoken over, and that was the last time I had done the report, so I know. I think if you're going to go at the Heritage Months, then I would say what I would prefer to do is to look through, cull through this list, bring that list back for you guys to verify that these are the ones, because again, I want to make sure we're all, above board, and that you guys all know what we're looking at, and then we could determine at that point, what's that next step? I mean, does the board want to approve a calendar, or does the board want to say, okay, each month prior that the board would have an item that acknowledges these? So the first step, I think, is defining
Heritage Month.
what months it is. This is a great list to start from. I think some of these, are pretty easy to determine. Fireworks Safety Month is not a Heritage Month. But
I have to say something. I don't want my remarks to be construed as being against the LGBT network or individuals, because there is no one in this district who fought harder for a past employee who was transitional. So I'm not against those people. And that didn't come out right, but I'm not against any individual whatsoever. I'm just against starting to add all of these events to our calendar, because we're gonna lose somebody, we're gonna insult somebody, we're going to have issues one right after the other, and we're gonna end up with a mess on our hands.
all right, well, let's.
I would just like to add, because it was asked, what is a Heritage Month? It truly is periods in our calendar in the year that are designated and designed to celebrate and acknowledge various ethnic and marginalized groups. That is the definition for someone had asked.
Fine,
What
I
is
want
a
to add
Heritage Month?
Portuguese to that.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
I want you to add Portuguese month.
Okay, I'd just like to make a couple of comments here. Trustee Anderson, you said that we're being told not to recognize American holidays and to recognize other stuff instead. I think the very important point that you're missing is these people are all American.
Well, Yeah,
And these are
that's
all America, this
But
is
at
all
the
part of
same time,
America.
we're
but-
losing.
Hang on, please let me finish. The whole reason for these months is these are people who have been marginalized and not treated as part of America. And when you're saying that we're losing American holidays in place of this, you're continuing the pattern of treating them as if they're not American. And to say that LGBTQ is not a cultural heritage could not be more wrong. And I'm getting a little fired up, so I'm just gonna stop at that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bruno. Let's go ahead and end the conversation. Can I call the question myself? No, we're not doing the question tonight, so, or maybe we are, I'm not sure.
It's almost an action item.
It is an action item, however, here's what I would like to recommend, rather than us make a motion tonight, let's go back, call the list, come up with a specific process of, you know, which ones we're recognizing, how we're recognizing, and what the expectation is of what that recognition means. Like, okay, the board will recognize it the month prior, and it is simply a board action item that says we're recognizing these groups, period. Or in addition to that, we would like, you know, communications sent out, or in addition to that, we would like to encourage teachers to include this, and whatever it is that we are recommending needs to be spelled out exactly. And I apologize if it is spelled out, but I think it needs more detail. And so I would like to move that we table this until next month.
Okay,
I apologize. Can I make a motion that in addition to table, I guess amending your motion, President Kelly, that a list is brought to us of the Heritage Month selected by Superintendent Blair, using the definition that we've provided here in our session today.
I would like to second that.
Yeah, you know what, I don't think we need a motion. We can just provide direction to them to bring it back to us with more, with the called list based on that definition. I don't think we need to.
correct. You could provide me
move
direction.
And vote on it.
Oh, I thought you had made a motion and I was amending it, President Kelly.
And,
Maybe I misunderstood.
No, I'm just saying, let's table it
Ah,
for now.
And I apologize if my choice of words was, I'm sure, definitely wrong. In my frustration to try to relate what I was feeling, I chose the wrong words. And maybe I'll get into that in a one-on-one basis so that I'm not taking up more time and I can do a better job of explaining myself to you. It's just a very frustrating thing to me. And I get wrapped up in it. So
It's
I'll
very
leave it at
difficult.
that. And I apologize if I chose the wrong words. I am not against anyone in this district whatsoever. And I want that to come out loud and clear.
Yeah, it's very difficult. Norms change, verbiage changes.
And I've proven
Things
that in
change.
my past actions.
And, you know, we're all learning every single day how to become better at eliminating these disparities and racial and marginalized populations. And it's just a learning curve. We just all have to think about what's my role in doing this and how am I contributing to the negative or how am I contributing to the positive? So don't beat yourself up about it, Mrs. Anderson.
Well, it's
It's a learning
frustrating.
process.
So just, I know there's a motion for a table. I know there's a bunch of motions. So here's the direction that I have. And then can I just make sure that by nodding or whatever?
Yeah.
That I will bring back a list based from the CDE's recommendations of heritage months. I'll bring a list back by month. And then with that, we'll bring that back to the October meeting. I can get that done by October. And then at that meeting, the board will want to recognize from those, they would talk about those heritage months or
Can we do it
heritage.
in November? I'm not here in October.
Fine with me. if it's okay. So pin in that for a minute. So November or October. And then the idea would be at that time, we'd agendize it to say, what's the process for recognition? So we identify what the list is, you guys agree to that list, and then the second piece of that item would be, how are we going to acknowledge or recognize? Is that a correct
Yeah, you're
summary?
right, that's going to require further discussion.
Correct.
Which I don't think we're prepared to do right.
And so and then the second piece to that was someone asked if we do it in November. Is that agreeable to everyone?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch what's happening in October. Are we not meeting in October?
We have a member who will be absent, had a prior commitment, so we're thinking November, so all 5 can participate.
But will we have a quorum in October?
A quorum? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I think the business of this board needs to continue. And just because one person's not there, if there's a quorum, then we're able to act. And I don't see why we wouldn't.
Because I'd like to participate in the conversation and I will not be here. So I'm asking for November.
It's just a request.
I think that with a matter of this level of personal feelings, I think it's better to have us all if it's only gonna delay it one month. That's my opinion.
I don't see any rush in it.
All right, so we have a motion on the table to table this to November with direction to the district. Do we have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. And roll call vote.
That's
Mr.
so
Bruno.
that
I'm sorry, here in November,
Yes.
Mrs. Pope. To table? Are you abstaining?
I want you here.
Yes, tabling it to November. To
I'd
November.
rather not table it. I'd rather- But yes, I'll table it. I vote aye.
Mrs. Anderson
I,
and Dr. Lee,
Aye.
chair votes aye.
So for my clarity, November, I will be bringing back a list culled from the CDE Heritage Months with an item to verify those for you in November, and then also with an item to recognize how we would acknowledge these months or heritage months. Is that, okay, I just want to make sure I'm restating it, bring back the right thing.
All right, let's get moving so we can get out of here sometime before midnight. Sorry, that was just a joke. It was not meant to be tonight. Okay, item 10B, meeting format. At the August 18, 2021 board meeting, the board approved the addition of a statement to be included on the agenda prior to the Pledge of Allegiance. Motion also included that the board will review and make a final approval of the statement. So
I will motion to bring this to the floor.
thank you, Mr. Bruno, and give a second. What did you say? To bring it to the floor? Anyone want to second his motion to bring this?
Oh,
to the-
second, I second.
Okay, great. So I had drafted a revised version of this, and unfortunately I did not bring it, but I made some notes here, so I will wait until everyone has had a chance to participate, and then I will read what unless you guys want me to go first. It's up to you.
You didn't have it, but you have it.
I wrote it while we were sitting there. So, my idea on this is just to clean up the wording a little bit and streamline it. So, you guys all have what it is in your book right now, and I am recommending that we change it to, in recognition of free speech and the following agenda item. We welcome all and we will note that saying the Pledge of Allegiance is not a requirement to participate in the business of this public board. If you do say the pledge for any reason, or if you do not say the pledge for any reason, you are most welcome here as an equal participant in the business of this board. That's essentially the same statement, it's just a little bit more streamlined. And that's my recommendation.
I have one.
Go ahead.
You have the right to remain silently seated during the pledge. Note, however, that if you decline to say the pledge, that you do not have the right to disrupt the proceedings. If you choose not to say the pledge for any reason, you are most welcome here as an equal participant in the business of this public school board. So,
Anyone else have thoughts?
Much more straight to the point.
And I will just say that each of those different versions really reflected each member's personality, I think. You know, for me, I'm certainly not uncomfortable with continuing to make my statement. I thought I understood the intent. But if the intent is to just completely rework it, I would prefer to, you know, continue to exercise, you know, my free speech so that I can include those various constituencies, religious, political, social, or personal reasons. Those are all the different reasons why a community member might not say the pledge. And I think it's important to call that into the space, and that's why I do. And so I would have a great problem with stripping that or telling folks they have the right to remain silent or anything of that nature, because that's not the intent or even the tone or measure of the statement that I make at the beginning, you know, during that item. It shifts the tone. It shifts the tone to a negative for me.
I just have to agree with Dr. Lee. I think telling people that they can remain silent. Just hearing that, it sounds like you're
And not disrupt,
court,
you know.
You're being read your Miranda rights. It's very confrontational, and I'm sorry, it's just the way that it was received by me. It was extremely confrontational, which completely eliminates the whole intent of the statement. I'm sorry. Anybody else have thoughts? I mean, I'm sorry that I love you, and I don't want to offend you, but I found that to be very, very confrontational. So, thank you. Anyone else have anything to say?
So, Dr. Lee, just to clarify, with Trustee Kelly's version of it, if we added back in,
Religious, political, social, and personal.
yeah, if we added back in the religious, political, social, personal reasons, were you okay with the other change?
Yeah, it kept the feeling of a welcoming and of an inviting and of an acceptance of all the different people. I really appreciated President Kelly's.
You know, it's very flowery and sounds nice, but a professional writer for the public's view is told to write at the 7th grade level. That's somebody who's writing for public consumption every single day. That's what they're taught. I don't know that that's gonna fly with most of our parents, and I mean, I don't know, it just.
Let me read it again with those words added back in.
We've got to do something about the deficit ideologies. It just keeps coming out, and we keep making these negative statements about members of our community and their abilities and their capacities. And it really bothers me because I'm on this board because I believe in our community and I strongly support our community. And so the deficit ideologies, I hope we can get a handle on them. I hope we can get a handle on them because they're stifling our progress. They really are.
We're getting off
track. So I understand what Mrs. Anderson is saying, that you do write to a certain level. However, I don't believe that this is in excess of that. Let me read it one more time. The only words in here that may be more difficult would be requirement, participate, participant. None of those words are beyond a 7th grade reading level. So, or 8th grade, which is actually what it should be, or 6th, I don't know, whatever it is. Let me read it one more time. In recognition of free speech and the following agenda item, we welcome all and would like to note that saying the Pledge of Allegiance is not a requirement to participate in the business of this public board. If you do not say the pledge for religious, political, social, or personal reasons, you are most welcome here as an equal participant in the business of this board. So it's just slightly different, just eliminating a few words, changing sentences, starting. I have a feeling that if we do vote on this, it's gonna be a split vote, and I'm okay with that. We just need to move on and decide if we want to make a vote.
What are we voting?
I'm not stopping discussion, I'm just saying.
Are there any public comments?
Not online. Are there any Mr. Bruno comments? 'Cause I'm looking for you.
Frankly, aside from a minor nitpick thing that I don't have the brain capacity to try to correct, which is business of this board, followed by business of this board is
Yeah,
repetitive wording, but
it is.
I don't have a problem with that personally.
Okay,
I don't see why it has to be read at every meeting. Nobody comes to the meetings except for the people that are here. They all know,
there's people listening to your live stream and.
they're all employees.
And
It has to be read for the same reason that the pledge is said.
I would say that part of the reason for adding it is because, yes, we have a fairly empty room tonight, but this pandemic will end at some point, hopefully. And I'm anticipating people coming back to the meetings and also.
don't get your hopes up, sorry.
And also,
We never had 'em before.
it applies to staff members as well. They are welcome to say the word.
But if it's written on the agenda,
But I'm just saying that having it there and saying it, I think is just good practice to try to involve the community and make sure people don't feel excluded.
All right, do we have a motion to approve the statement as revised?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Bruno. Do we have a second?
Second,
And we'll take a roll call vote unless there's any further
what
discussion.
was the motion?
The motion is to approve that the statement be revised as I read it and added to the agenda and read prior to the Pledge of Allegiance. Any further discussion? Are we ready for the vote? All right, Dr. Lee,
aye.
Mrs. Anderson,
No.
Mr. Bruno,
Aye.
Mrs. Pope,
No,
and the chair votes aye.
For our sake, would you mind sharing what you've written there too, so Carol can make sure? I think she got it.
Absolutely, it'll be right here in the book.
You can read that.
Yeah, can have.
I'd like to say why I voted no before we
That's
continue.
fine.
The statement I'm not happy with. And the second thing is, I think just written on the agenda is fine and it does not need to be read out loud. But I agree with the statement. I mean, I like what it says. I like the point. I just don't think it needs to be read out loud as well as written. Be reworded.
I just think it can go on the agenda. It doesn't have to be read at every meeting.
And I just think that, I appreciate the vote. And I think it's important that we're inclusive of everyone. And I think it's one small step, but an important one. And if we weren't giving the same space to that statement as we do to the act, then we wouldn't be being inclusive.
Just passed 3-2. And we are moving on to business item C, instructional materials adoption for grades 10 through 12, science, next generation science standards, textbooks. We have a motion to approve the recommendation.
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Bruno. Do we have any discussion on this item?
Just thank you to everybody that participated in the adoption of the 10-12 science textbooks. I know it's a lot of work and it's much appreciated.
Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Dr. Lee,
Aye.
Mrs. Anderson,
Aye.
Mrs. Pope,
Aye.
Mr. Bruno,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Item C is passed. Moving on to business item D, appointment of Center Endowment for Educational Excellence Officer. And let me just read this brief sentence. The board will discuss and appoint a current member of CJUSD's Board of Trustees to serve as an officer for the Center Endowment for Educational Excellence. Do we have any a motion?
A motion to bring it to the floor.
Do we have a second?
Second,
Okay, I'm not sure why we're bringing it to the floor, but
For discussion.
for discussion, go
We
ahead.
need to
Let's
discuss.
Yeah, so just so the board is aware and community is aware, so we do have a Center Endowment for Educational Excellence. It's an endowment that was formed, gosh, back in 2008, I believe. And with that, part of the bylaws stipulate that myself and Ms. Coronado as CFO and superintendent, but then also we have a community member, which currently is Dominic Mecklenburg, who is the community member and also the president of the bank at Umpqua. And then Ms. Pope. But it does also require 2 current trustees from the Center Joint Unified School District beyond that. One position is filled by Mrs. Pope. The other one was vacated by Mr. Wilson when he vacated his spot. So we would just be seeking for the endowment, someone to fulfill that other responsibility on that endowment board.
And this is the Center Endowment for Educational Excellence.
Yeah.
Do you have any recommendations or volunteers?
So I would say, as you do with your group in December, someone might make a motion to appoint someone. And then you could then vote it that way if there is, just like you do with your president. So.
Since Mrs. Anderson has been here the longest and is familiar with the endowment, unless somebody else is interested, I would think that Mrs. Anderson would be a good choice.
Mrs. Anderson, would you accept the nomination? Do we have any other nominations?
I just have a point of information. Can someone tell me what does the endowment, what does it do? What does the Center Endowment for Educational Excellence do? What is it?
Sure. So it was established, and I forgive me for the year, I believe it was 2008. One of our board members at times established it to support the arts education within the school district. With that, it was also established as the development was being built, a mechanism for us to receive donations, endowed money, different things like that to then distribute. Instead of coming right into the district, it would be done through a separate entity for the district. With that, early on, we did some performances, we did different, wine and cheese event, a lot of nice things. Actually, Ms. Pope did a couple events early on to do that. Then to be honest, that one board member who was on it left. And then we didn't get a lot of support for activities, and then financial times fell on people. And so it just kind of sat. And so we felt that it's best to keep it going. It's a small fee, and I know Lisa does some work behind the scenes to keep it up, but it's a good entity for us to have in the event that we do receive big donations from anyone.
It's a dream.
I'm just glad that Mrs. Anderson has already been nominated, because I would raise my hand and volunteer for arts, and I do not have the bandwidth. So there we go.
It would be nice to see some arts back in, well, we have arts, but
Yeah.
maybe the Kings will donate. We should try that.
Okay. Do we have any other nominations? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve Nancy Anderson as being appointed to the Center Endowment for Educational Excellence?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Lee and Mrs. Pope, and a roll call vote. Dr. Lee?
Aye.
Mrs. Anderson?
Aye.
So, no, I said Mrs.
No, I
Anderson.
abstained.
She didn't vote yet. I was waiting for it. Mrs. Anderson?
I abstain.
Aye.
And Mr. Bruno?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, and vote for yes, and one abstain. All right, item E, 2020-2021 unaudited actuals report. We should really do this when our brains are fresher, but let's hear it, Mrs. Coronado.
Oh, it's only 8:15. I mean, geez, we used to go to midnight.
All right, the 2021 unaudited actuals report covers all the fiscal activity of all of the funds in the year 2021. Let's see, and your PowerPoint presentation is in your packet. Starting with page 2. I just want to remind you of the budget cycle that it goes around. So even though we're in this year, this school year of 21-22, my brain is still in the past year of 2021, working on closing the books and wrapping up the audit for those the expenditures and revenue that came in. So we're doing that on the actuals, and then in December, I'll come back with the first interim financial report for this current year of 21-22. So just a reminder that questions about this year are not going to be addressed in this report. This is about the prior year. Page 3. This is an overview of all of the unrestricted and restricted revenues and expenditures that have come in. If you'll notice, the unrestricted revenue was $44 million and expenditures was $30 million. This does not include contributions to to restricted funds such as special ed and the restricted maintenance fund. So what I want to do is look at the total fund on the right-hand side, because that does take into account the contributions. The revenues from the total fund was $58.6 million and expenditures was $53 million. The beginning fund balance that we started with on July 1, 2020 was $9.6 million. We had an increase in fund balance of $4.5 million, leaving us with an ending fund balance of $14.4 million. I looked back at second interim in 2019 and through 2020, and that was before COVID hit. And we anticipated that in this year, we would have an increase of $564,000. So we are well above that. And a lot of it is just savings from COVID, using COVID funds for expenditures that we would normally use our general fund for. And I'll get to that in a later slide. So when we look at ending fund balance, we have $37,000, which is unspendable, which is our stores and revolving accounts. Restricted funds are $2.57 million. The 3% reserve is $1.59 million, and that leaves us with an unassigned balance of about $10 million. Looking at the next slide, 4, this just shows us for the past 3 years how we've compared with revenues versus expenditures. In 18-19, we had a surplus of about $1 million. In 19-20, a surplus of $230,000, and then our surplus that I mentioned this year, about $5 million. Page 5 are our contributions. We contribute $1.6 million to the required restricted maintenance account, and our special education drew $6.87 million from our general fund this year. I do use unrestricted lottery that comes in, and I put that towards the special ed funds and then our general fund, LCFF funding. Page 6. This is just a graph that looks at our unrestricted ending fund balance, and it shows how it jumped from 1920 to 2021 as a result of the funding that's come in. I want to remind you that these funds are considered one-time funds. So we as a district are looking at how to expend these funds, not only our COVID funds, but these one-time funds that are falling out at the end of the year. I created a budget committee, and we all met and came up with ideas for needs for the district. We asked principals to talk to their parent groups. We asked them to talk to their staff meetings. We had union representation there. I had adult ed representation there, family resource, their new name I can't remember, representation there, our maintenance supervisor. So we tried to get everybody involved from all of our departments. And there was a shared Google spreadsheet, and everybody can just add ideas of where we thought needs were. And then a smaller group then looked at those needs to see which were feasible. And we prioritized them, green, yellow, red, and took those green ideas and are going to put them into place. Ideas are an EL coordinator is needed because our EL population scored lower than our special education population on the test scores. And so we really need to make sure that the curriculum is meeting their needs and the program that we offer is meeting their needs. We are looking at an educational technology teacher. So we are bringing technology into the classroom, and we have teachers who are not really, may not be used to that. And so we need to provide support for them so that we go ahead and provide the best curriculum that we can, which is often technology based these days. So our budget committee is looking at these funds and how they could best meet the needs of our district.
So with them being one-time funds and we're talking about bringing on staff, how are we handling that, Cliff?
The COVID relief fund should last us 3 years, so when we bring on staff, we know that it's a 3-year proposal. Hopefully, we will, through attrition, we'll be able to keep these great employees that we're getting, or as we build new schools, hopefully we can just transition them into those positions.
Yeah, I think I would be more concerned about keeping the positions. I mean, I'm concerned about keeping the people, obviously, but also the positions.
Right.
So, I mean, I'm hoping that we will be able to come up with some sort of funding or adjustments that would allow us to keep these, but we obviously need them. So.
Correct, we do need them. You know, and maybe as we grow, we'll get more LSAF funding and be able to.
The strategy we took is knowing that the funds are one time, not just getting rid of it all in 1 year. And we tried to stagger it out. You'll see a bulk of it when we come back will be personnel. So we have intervention, we have our specialists there. They're out as long as we possibly can. With also the other idea is there's already rumors floating around. There might be another pot, which Lisa will love, that we can help to extend some of these. And it gives us time to also evaluate the success and the progress or growth we're making with those individuals too, so we can kind of analyze what's making the biggest impact for our students.
And we have a lot of one-time expenditures that we're spending these funds on. For instance, a new server. The Wi-Fi is not great in our district, so we're looking at adding some whatever makes it work. I don't know. That's not my area.
Stuff.
No, it's stuff. Yeah.
Well, I think the other one's the HVAC. It's I think a $2 million project around HVAC and improving the HVAC. Sorry, Kelly.
He's saying that just for me because it's like a broken record. What about the HVAC? What about the HVAC?
Okay, page 7. So looking at enrollment, unfortunately, it is still going down. It's hard to judge right now during the pandemic. Some people are choosing to do homeschooling or go to some charter schools, independent study-based charter schools. And so all we can look at though are the numbers we have today. And I looked on, this was as of September 2nd, our enrollment was 4,160. And then I looked today and it was 4,122. So it's still going down. Looking at the next page, our ADA, we are funded on current year or prior year. So because current year is going down, we're funded on prior year. But prior year was 2021 when we did not take attendance. So it goes back to being funded on 1920. And so you'll see that we're funded on 4,115.44 ADA for 1920 and 2021 and 2122. Page 9. Looking at other funds, we have $2.4 million in Fund 17, our special reserve. Mr. Lair talked about having a deficit regarding building our new school. This is a special reserve that could go towards that if needed. It doesn't nearly cover the shortfall, but it is available for that. We have Fund 20, our other post-deployment benefit fund, and there's $1.4 million in that fund, and then actually in the trust is $500,000. And then in our developer fee fund, we have $7.1 million. He's coming every day, so I'm sure we're up to $7.5 million at this point.
Just to note that we don't want to move anything from Fund 20.
Right.
Unless we're moving it into the trust.
That's a trust, I understand that. I tried to give a little bit of a snapshot of how we may have saved some of this money, and this money is falling out. So on page 10, the first line are certificated staff salaries, extra hours, substitutes. In 18-19, we spent $1 million in this area. 19-20, $890,000, and then last year $475,000. So about half in just our extra hours and substitute payments. And then if you go down to fuel and oil, in 18-19, we spent $109,000, and then 19-20, $96,000, and then last year just $40,000. So that's how it shows it's one-time money. I have to put back the $108,000 in this year's budget because we're back in school and the buses are moving again. So, so it was a one-time savings that we just got because schools were closed. And page 11. We were able to move a lot of expenses from the general fund to the COVID funding. And so here's a list of our major expenses. All noon duty costs while schools were closed moved to COVID funding out of our general fund. That was $200,000. Some nutrition services costs were moved, $770,000. All of our transportation department costs were moved to, and that's $678,000. As you go down the list, it totals $2.5 million that I was able to take out of the general fund expenditures and move them to the COVID relief expenditures. Again, that explains where this windfall comes from. Moving on to the last page, page 12, our COVID relief funds. Our total allocation of COVID money was $25 million, which is about half of our budget. We expended in 2021, $6.4 million. 21-22, we've committed at time of on August 31st, $4.3 million. We've committed more since then. That was for salaries. The committed amounts for non-salaries was $670,000. The assigned, meaning we know what we're going to spend it on, was $11 million. So our leftover money from COVID relief funds is about $3 million. And I listed below what is assigned. Mr. Lair mentioned the HVAC systems, that North Country and CHS for now, that's $2 million. Continuing summer school, continuing the salaries that we have in place, increasing our health staff, adding behavior specialists for the behaviors that are going on. So that's an overview of last year's revenue and expenditures. The auditors now will look at it and then they will bring back their report on the unaudited actuals, which you will then approve or accept. Do you have any questions about these?
I just want to say thank you, Lisa. This is with all the COVID ins and outs and all the reporting you have to do. I know it was a huge task, so thank you to you and your wonderful team.
Yes, similarly, I'm always really impressed with how you're able to balance all of this. A lot of it flies over my head, so I'm really glad that there's someone like you.
Thank you. Dr. Lee, do you have questions?
No, I just also want to express appreciation to Ms. Coronado breaking this down in a way that we can understand. On the health staff, are those the social workers or are those different from the social workers?
Those are different from the social workers. It's in addition to the social workers. And
So
that's
is that nurses or what are
Yes.
those for? Okay.
Yes, just to help with the testing that we have to do with our staff.
So they're not nurses, just for clarity, they're health techs, so they're folks that do some of the functions. So true RNs, we have some LVNs we're contracting with, but we do have their health techs, so we can have one person at each school site. And then in addition, I just want to thank Lisa for everything she did. Closing the books right now is hard enough, but with the multitude of new funds and cash coming in, it's a daunting task. And over the years, you can see it's always you try to get towards that Labor Day mark. And you can see in the business office the way it was this year. So I appreciate everything you did to make that happen.
Because I have to mention, they don't just give you one pot of COVID funds. I have 9 pots, all with different requirements that I have to keep track of. So it's fun. I'm glad we have the funds.
This is what Scott and I were talking about yesterday, so you must wake up at 3 a.m. and go, I wonder if I could move that, use COVID funds for that thing, or.
With a spreadsheet this wide and this many tabs.
You must have a notebook or whiteboard or something by your bed that just,
I love
jot
Excel.
everything down.
Excel's my friend.
Excel's my favorite.
Okay, I think we need a motion. Do we have a motion to approve the unaudited actual as presented? Oh, I'm sorry. No worries. Did you have more questions?
No, I just said I'll move.
Oh, okay, great. And Mrs. Anderson seconded. We have a roll call vote. Dr. Lee.
Aye.
Mrs. Anderson.
Aye, and thank you, Lisa.
Sure. Mrs. Polk. Aye. Mr. Bruno.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. So item E is passed 5-0. And moving on to business item F, resolution number 5/2021-22, GAN limit resolution. I believe Lisa is standing there to discuss.
It's just a formality. In the seventies, a law was passed to make sure government spending didn't get out of hand. And a limit is established based on the seventies number. And then they add in inflation and add in population growth and come up with a new limit each year. And anything over that limit for the state government has to be returned to taxpayers 50% and schools 50%. And then we also have to have our limit, and we can't exceed spending too. The limit always stays under inflation and that population growth, so we've never actually had to be concerned about it. So it is just a formality that we just pass this new limit that is presented to you.
Any questions? We have a motion to approve. So moved. Second,
I'll second.
Mrs. Anderson, Mr. Bruno. Roll call vote, Dr. Lee,
Aye.
Anderson. Aye. Mrs. Pope. Aye. Mr. Bruno.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Item F is passed. Thank you.
Thank you,
Moving
Lisa.
on to, thank you, Lisa, sorry. You always remember, and I always forget, sorry. Item 11A, future meeting dates, regular meeting Wednesday, October 20 at 6 p.m. Right here. And do we have any suggested agenda items?
I do. I spoke to Mr. Mayor in regards to asking Mr. Jordan, who so graciously said yes, to add him to the agenda if for a little update on his department. So that's starts next month, right?
Yeah, so Mr. Jordan and I talked, one of the things we've been, I don't know if I say wrestling with is how do we keep you guys as informed with like progress on LCAP, progress with our special ed students, progress with our EL students, progress. So what we're gonna do is come up with kind of a pattern to keep you updated. We're doing some iReady stuff. You know, how do we show the data? When we get the results from some of the Panorama surveys, how can we show this? So it would be a good placeholder for us to bring forward some of that stuff. And if we don't have anything, we'll stand up there but I guarantee you we will be filled with something.
And then the other thing I would like is maybe come December, if Ryan Miranda would come and speak to the board about some of his department and what's going on with him. We haven't heard from Ryan in a bit.
Great idea.
Perfect. I'm sure Ryan would love to brag about his department.
I have an item, but it's not for the regular board meeting. I'm just wanting to get on the books our next board workshop for planning for board, what is it called? Handbook.
Handbook, okay.
For developing or updating, whatever it is. What we talked about before.
So
was
kind of the
6
next
p.m.
steps from the
next steps,
Saturday
yes.
workshop.
And I'm not sure when or where or how we want to do that, but we don't want to get into December because I know people get busy with the holidays. And October is off the table because Trustee Pope is out. So if we could look at November, I'm not sure we'll be with that, but
That'd be great.
awesome.
And I have a couple of agenda items, suggested agenda items for our next meeting. First, a discussion item for updates about the vaccination mandates for K-12 students. I'm hoping that Superintendent Blair, the staff can bring us some updates, and if folks have things to say that they'll bring it to there instead of to individual board members. And then an action item also to approve our board participation in the California School Board Association Equity Network Training. Something popped in our inboxes and I reached out to Michael Annanden from there. It's a year-long network, provides support for superintendents and 2 trustees to really collaborate and build capacity to govern through a lens of equity. It sounds like a great program. I've talked to folks who participated in it. They said it was great for their governance team. So I would like to bring that as an action item to approve our participation in that.
Remember him, don't you, Scott?
Yes. Trying to reach.
All
him
right,
before-
any other agenda items? Chair would entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Mrs. Pope. We have a second. Mrs. Anderson, and I think we could do general consent on adjournment. Do we have general consent? All right, we we are out of here.
Good night, all.
Everybody for your patience.